The addiction itself is just a symptom of the trauma that's underneath. Most people go in with judgment rather than curiosity. Not many people actually understand the psychology behind addiction. So the first thing I would say is educate yourself.
The surface level, like the addiction, is not really the problem. It's what's driving, it's the trauma that's driving the addiction. That's the problem.
You're not going to beat the addiction with more shame. It needs to be given love. It needs to be given room. They need to feel safe enough to actually express what created the addiction.
Everybody just wants to be away from the pain. Distraction, drug abuse, and so on and so forth. Overworking, overtraining. You're just basically running away.
Welcome to the Successful Irishman podcast, where we know success isn't only about money and material riches, it's about personal freedom, owning your time and leaving your trauma, triggers and limiting beliefs behind. My name is Dara Byrne, life coach, trauma recovery specialist and entrepreneur. And on this podcast, we will be sitting down with guests to hear their incredible life stories and to challenge the societal idea of success. Welcome to the embodied business coach, entrepreneur and all-round rock star. Casey is one of my dear friends of many years. I've walked alongside, crawled alongside and learned alongside. There's been lots of snots, tears and laughter along the way. Casey, it's absolutely epic to have you on the show today. Welcome. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. And I'm so excited to be here. As you said yesterday, it's like we haven't actually dove deep into a conversation in, it's been a good 12 months before we've had this level of depth. So I'm excited.
Let's do it. Let's start excavating. What do you reckon?
That's a word. That's definitely a word right now.
That's a word. Casey's going through some incredible wins in her life right now. So really quickly, we'll briefly go back to the early days of life. If you can give us a quick cap, what life was like growing up, what life was like for you growing up, and a few more stories along the way.
Yeah, so for me, I grew up with my parents being addicts, alcoholics. There was drugs involved. There was lots of different things, and they separated at 8 years old. So when I was 8, I should say. So it was very much that next 5 years was intense. We moved around. We had moments of homelessness as a family. And yeah, it was just like them trying to clean themselves up and really pull their life back in together. They obviously stayed separated, but now it's just this completely different world that I live in, right? So like when I was 16, I had this dream of joining the military, and I had a critical asthma attack that almost cost me the dream of the military. And then when I finally was 18, I joined the military. And that was really where my whole story starts for myself personally, because I went into the military thinking that was going to be my safe zone and where I was going to spend the rest of my days being in service to others and doing the thing. And I actually was discharged 18 months after being in for like quite a severe back injury. And so the back injury really started my work in the personal development space. I spent a good 5 years after being booted out, deep in depression, anxiety, all the things. And it was just a real up and down roller coaster. And the rehabilitation of that back injury led me into personal training, which then became my business, which then led me into understanding that there's way more than just a gym. It's also what's going on in the mind and the spirit and the body, all the other things that started interconnecting. And so it was like this progression of like following the breadcrumbs through my life. And, you know, that led into coaching, which led into working with women in relationships, which led into business coaching, which led into me where I am now. That's the very short version of it all.
That's a 30,000 feet overview. Is that correct? If life was only so straight lined as that, what?
Stories in between there. You'd be like, oh, that's why she's like
yes, exactly. And I've had the privilege of knowing you for 6-7 years now, and I've got to witness a lot of the breakdowns and breakthroughs and the snots, tears and all the things that has helped you get to this level in life. So it's a privilege to be here beside you and work alongside you too. Just coming all the way back, you mentioned addiction in your childhood and your parents. Please explain or elaborate a bit more on, some of the feelings you felt
Mm.
around that time?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because, they say that people become a warning or an example, right?
Hmm.
And for me, it was kind of like I always knew it was a warning. It was always like, that's not the road you're leading. And I remember at like 8 years old, I was sitting there and I was watching my mum dig through the couch for a 99-cent loaf of bread at the time, back in the day when bread was still $1, right? And she's digging through and she had like 70 cents. And I was asking her for something. I can't remember what it was. And she was like, just shut up. I'm trying to find some money. Like, she was angry right? And in that moment, I had this download, this thing of like, this won't be your life. This won't be your life. Like, just trust. And it was really weird because I didn't know what that was, but somehow or other, I never attached to what my story was or my circumstance was as a child. And so no matter what we were going through, I think a lot of kids, they go through this kind of upbringing where there's domestic violence, there's, a lack of stability in the home and all those sorts of things. And it can feel scary and it can feel lost. But what I'd actually done as a child was dissociate from all my emotions. And so
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? I've just got to make sure we get through. And and I was always the strong one. So I built this mask of like, it doesn't matter what comes at me. I'm adaptable. I'm so strong because I know that this is not where I'm going to end up being. But it did create like quite a bridge for me later on in life to try and
Uh-huh.
actually tap into what that little girl needed. But
Uh-huh.
in the moment, I remember thinking, you know, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like, I'd see moments when my mom and dad were literally bashing each other. It wasn't just one or the other. It was like, both of them going at it. And it felt like normal life. It felt like that's where we're at in this stage of life. And so it wasn't, it didn't feel unfamiliar, is what I'm trying to get at. So
Hmm.
I was used to the chaos. I was used to that level of life. But I remember as I would have been about maybe like 10 years old, I went over to one of my girlfriend's houses and we lived in the housing commission just outside of the rich area, right?
Uh-huh.
So I was the poor girl with all the rich kids, and I went into their house, one of their houses one day, and I walked in there and I thought to myself, wonder what secrets this family has.
Ah,
And that's when I kind of
babe.
started to like catch myself at 10 years old being like, is that normal? Like, yeah, every family has secrets and stuff, but I'm not sure that that's actually normal. And I made a commitment to myself, like literally at like 10 years old, being like, I don't ever want my family to have secrets. I don't ever want my family to have to hide anything. And so it's weird because as much as it was not the best upbringing, there was something that was already rising within me through it at a very, very young age.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure there's a lot. Obviously, you've worked through a lot of these things with your family over the years, and
Mm.
realizing the truth of the past is part of healing, and letting that go brings closure for everybody, I'd imagine, across the family. So, speaking in terms of a relationship with the family today, just touching on that subject, how is it?
Honestly, it's next level. Like, my dad still often struggles with alcoholism and stuff like that. Like, I'm not gonna sit
Uh-huh.
here and pretend it's all perfect. However, the relationship and the healing that has had to happen in order
Hmm.
for me to have a decent relationship is really good. And, like, I don't know what the outcome will be here, but I'm in conversations with my dad now about coming in and joining in some of this work and doing this kind of stuff with us. And
Uh,
for me, even being able to bridge that conversation, have those conversations, just goes to show just how far along we have been.
mhm.
The one thing I really want to comment on all of this was the thing that probably made my childhood what it was, in terms of not so bad, like in my own view, was
Uh-huh.
my parents never hid anything from me. So I'm a 10-year-old girl with all of this stuff I know about everything. Like,
So
I'm
you had to
talking,
grow up fast.
I grew up very fast,
Uh-huh.
very fast. And so people would say to me at like 18, they're like, God, you're so wise for your age. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm watching drug dealers at fucking 10 years old. Like, it was big. And, but like, I'm just very grateful that I also watched the rebuild.
Mhm.
I also watched what it looks like for people to choose their power over like an addiction. Like my mum is, I love her so dearly because I'm able to talk to her so much. Also on the level of like, she'll tell me what was going on when all of this stuff was going down. And like, it's not this big juicy secret between us. Like, you know, and I
Mhm.
think that 10-year-old girl who was like, I wonder what secrets are going on. It was like she started to manifest the openness through the family as I got older, you know? So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
quite
epic.
cool.
That's
Yeah.
epic. And I agree with you on that as well, in terms of being open, but
Mm,
also the life that you lived previously is what set the foundation for the life that you live today.
mm,
Without any part of that, you wouldn't have needed to heal from X, Y, and Z, which wouldn't have led you down this path and wouldn't have led you down the path of service and being a home
mm,
mother, a business owner, and yeah, impacting like basically globally. So
mm.
yeah, well done with that. And just touching on the juiciness of a secret, or without needing to keep secrets.
Yeah.
How imperative is it to have an open communication within a family dynamic? And what are the benefits of that?
Yeah, well, I think, one of our mentors, I remember hearing him say one day, if you don't own your story, it will own you.
Hmm.
And the one thing that I know to be true is like every time I've withheld something, I feel it in my body. Like it literally takes up so much space because I'm so tapped in now. It's like I can't do that bit where we withhold anymore. I just physically can't. Like, you know what I'm like? I'm an open book. If I've got an opinion, you're going to hear about it, right? Like,
Oh yeah, damn
but
straight.
but I think it's one of those things where it's like shame conceals, guilt reveals. And so whether or not we think we're holding a secret, energetically, we're still vibrating like that. And like people always like, oh, I don't know what it is about that person, but it just feels off. And it's like there's usually because there's something that they're hiding. And you can feel that energetically, right? It's like that old saying, what we do in private, we will wear in public. And it
Hmm.
might be like to protect other people, that's why you're keeping the secret. But what you're actually doing is creating separation from you and other people. Because if there's one thing that I've learned, and I'm sure you can attest to this too with the work that we've done together, is the more that shit's out of your body, the more connected you feel to humanity and to everyone because we all have shit. All of
Ah,
us.
oh
Like
yeah, oh yeah.
the person I've been in relationships prior to the current one, even the current one now, like I'm not perfect. None of us are. And so it's like looking at it from a perspective of like, I can either put myself in a prison cell and play a certain role, or I can just be honest with myself and give myself freedom. Simple.
Oh, so good, so good.
Mm,
Um, just to highlight that, you can put yourself in a prison cell and by playing a certain role, or you can honor who you truly are and give yourself freedom. Just to
mm,
double down on that, for the listener, what Case is also saying is a lot of people wear masks and live up to this identity that's been set for them in society, and the weight of that identity becomes so heavy, it becomes a cage that traps us into further removing us from who we truly are.
mm.
And that's why in today's society, a lot of people are lost, feel stuck, and stick to that identity or fear career changes or relationship changes. Casey, I seen you were about to say something there. Far away.
I was just gonna say, like that strong mask that I was talking about as a child, like that
Uh-huh.
literally ruled my life for years. And
Mm,
so many women do this, especially with this whole masculine, like women are too masculine, blah, 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 all the things.
yeah.
But like for me, I remember having that mask on and simultaneously being like, I just wish a man would come save me. So like
Uh,
there's this mask and then there's this like victim behind it, right? That was like, I just want someone to save me. I remember crying on my bedroom floor one day, just like literally curled up in a ball, like I can't do this anymore. And so many people walk around like that all the time, having no idea that that's because they've built all these walls for protection every single day. They're walking around with all this guard, with all this armor on themselves. And it's like, what if you just dropped it? What if you let people see you? What would happen then?
And that's another thing as well. If people really knew me, they would know. Fill in the blank and just get the biggest secret off your chest, because it becomes liberating. It
Yeah.
becomes liberating. There's a book that I share with a lot of my clients, The Untethered Soul,
Oh, yeah.
which they speak about that same analogy, but it's a thorn in the side. So the more you build stuff around it, so you're going through life not as the true you. You're going through life afraid to get that thorn triggered at any stage of the game. So thank you for that wisdom, Case. I do want to bring it back real quick to, you know, you said growing up in a household with addiction, and, what would you say to anybody that were either experience a similar upbringing that might be listening to this today, and also if somebody was on the way out of that, if they're a parent, how they could, look after their children or help rebuild and remend relationships?
Yeah, there's a couple of angles I'd like to hit this from. Firstly, it's the compassion piece of knowing that the addiction is not them. Like, and that for me, I remember I used to hold a lot of judgment and shame myself about, what I experienced. And what I realized was it's like, the addiction itself is just a symptom of the trauma that's underneath. And so it's when we can look beyond what someone is doing to numb their pain, we can start to be like, okay, like, this is big. Like, I have like quite a strong like claircognizance and clairvoyance and stuff like that. And I've had conversations with my dad, like straight up, I'm like, you see the shit that I see. Like, I know that you've got this same ability. And he's like, yeah, I do. And like, it scares him, so he'll numb it, right? So it's like knowing why does someone do what they do is going to open the doors for you to be actually able to help them. Because the thing is, most people go in with judgment rather than curiosity. And unfortunately, the judgment makes them feel even more isolated. So they turn to the thing that numbs the emotion of them feeling isolated, of them feeling that. So if they're like, oh, well, they don't like that I'm doing that, rather than going and facing off with it, if their addiction's strong enough, they're going to go deeper into it. And not many people actually understand the psychology behind addiction. So the first thing I would say is educate yourself. Firstly, you have to educate yourself on what it means to be someone who's navigating this from an internal standpoint. Like me personally, and I wouldn't even say they're drugs, the only thing I've ever played with now is natural plant medicines. I have never touched a drug in my life. And that is because of what I've witnessed growing up. But I think there's something to be said here for like when you have had someone in your world that whether it's yourself or someone else navigating it, you're not going to beat the addiction with more shame. You're just not. Like, it needs to be given love. It needs to be given room, and they need to feel safe enough to actually express what created the addiction. And so if someone feels like they're not welcome, they're not available, people can say all the right words, but energetically, if you don't know how to hold that, and it may also be their own stories as well, it can create a dissonance from them actually being able to lean in. So that's the first bit I would say, is like really educate yourself on addiction versus just like, like what they're doing essentially. The second piece, as the child in that position, I would say don't lie. And the reason why I say that is because I have been in a privileged position to have parents that didn't lie to me. And what they did was they set the standard of always speaking your truth. And so growing up as an adult, I built a whole career of speaking my truth. And I think it's
quite feisty too.
yeah, quite feisty. But it gave me room for self-expression. And I want you to think about as a parent, like if your children are watching you diminish yourself or not speak your truth, what you're teaching them is when they become an adult, they have to hide things from the world. And so I think, like, I know a lot of parents, people who are in this space will not want to admit it out of protection and all the things for their family, because they're like, oh my God, this is so dangerous. And there is also a way to share it powerfully that isn't going to impede on them. But I think, it's really about, we see a lot of kids who rebel around the ages of 14 and 15. And look, I moved out of home and like just turned 16. So, you know, we see these kids who they rebel and they want to go out and do their own thing. And most of the time, the parents, they're playing like they're goody fucking two shoes, and their kids are like, they want to experience. But the thing is, the parents kept that side of them concealed. And so the children are trying to experience it. But like when you're just all of yourself with your kids and you're able to have these conversations, they don't feel the call to go and do that. Like I lived out of home from 16 and never felt the call to go and be like that. Like I fucking studied. I worked my ass off at KFC to pay my bills. And I like went through school and I almost went to law. I got accepted in for law and criminology because I was just so fascinated with what everything was. The only thing that made me not do that was I was also accepted to the military at the same time. And I was like, I can't afford that because my parents didn't pay for anything at that time. I had no one to cover me. So I was like, fuck it, I'll go to the military. They can pay for my law degree. That was my thought process. And so that was the main reason why I decided military over doing something like that, because I knew I needed to find safety in myself. But families who don't tell the truth, they'll often suffer later on when their kids are older, because their kids will like come back at them of like, well, you could have told me, like I was strong enough. Kids know. Like I think there's this concept that kids are dumb and that they're blind. And I can tell you right now, I saw everything, everything. And when my parents would try and hide stuff from me, it made it worse. And I would just be straight up with them and they'd be straight up with me. And it made it safer for me to know, because I learned discernment. I learned how to hold myself in adverse conditions, you know, like if you think you're protecting your child by hiding the truth from them, you're actually only protecting yourself from living up to what's actually here and denying their path.
Wow, that's really deep. That's really deep, and thank you for sharing. Touching on, you went into, so basically the surface level, like the addiction is not really the problem. It's what's driving, it's the trauma that's driving the addiction. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So
when I look at both my parents, like both my parents, they had hugely traumatic upbringings, right? Huge. And for the most part, like the first part of my childhood, they were trying to do the right thing. They were trying to get everything sorted, but it caught up with them because they didn't have the tools to meet with it, you know? And I think this is where a lot of people, they think you must be stupid to choose that. But what they're actually looking for is a way to be out of pain.
Yes. Gabor Mate speaks about that hugely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because ultimately that's what it all is. Everybody just wants to be away from the pain. Distraction, drug abuse, and so on and so forth. Overworking, overtraining. Yeah, you're just basically running away.
100%. It's escape leadership through and through. And, you know, I think until we're ready to take radical responsibility for ourselves, like, you know, and like whilst I may not have had a drug addiction, I definitely had food addictions. I definitely had obsessions with men that were not healthy. Like I did replace it with other things. And so once we start to take radical responsibility for ourselves and how we're handling our trauma and being with certain pieces, that's when we start to change the game. And we can't do it until we actually decide that, okay, I'm the one that's at the center of everything right now.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Let's do a quick brief through. You were in the military. I remember you tell the story. You got an injury along the way. So you give us the next chapter.
Yeah, so I joined the military just as October 2009, just after my 18th birthday. And not too long in, I met my partner, which became my fiance. And I also was incredibly injured. So most people, when they're marching, you know, we have to stride quite far. And what I didn't realize is we went out field one day and I'm carrying this pack, and, you know, I'm a 65 kilo woman with a 35 kilo pack on my back. So it's like more than half my body weight, right? And my back just seized up, like to the point where I couldn't walk. And so my corporal came and ripped the pack off my back. And then they drove me straight into medical to get assessed, and all they did was give me some painkillers, made me rest for like overnight, and then straight out field again. Anyway, because I had this injury that was pretty much just dulled with painkillers, and I was also extending my step each time we were marching in a like squadron, what happened was my hips started getting all this pressure through them. So by the time I left the military, it took them over 6 months to diagnose me. I had stress fractures through my hips, had bulging discs through my back, so L4, L5, had sacroiliac joint dysfunction, which is pretty much the tendons that joined my pelvis to my spine were just all fucked. And so I couldn't walk, essentially. I was like an old lady. I needed to lean on things. And I remember one day I was walking from one office to another on base, and it would have been 100 meters. And halfway through, I fell to the ground and I just started crying because I was in so much pain to try and walk. I couldn't wear the boots. I was wearing runners because they were the boots were too heavy for me to lift my legs. And by this stage, I'd already been pulled out of the course that I was in studying for my role. I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, I felt like because of where my injury was right on the base of my coccyx as well, on my spine, one day I'd walk on one side, I'd lean more on one side, so the other side was strengthened, and the next day I'd lean on the other side. And like all of my physicians knew this, it was a very common symptom for that kind of injury. But because other people would see me limp on different sides, I copped bullying from like, oh, you're a malingerer. Yesterday you were limping on this side, like, and so it became like torturous to go to work. And not to mention, I was the only female in a whole squadron of men because I had chosen the one role where there was one other woman in the whole Air Force that did it. And that was an aircraft structural fitter. And so I copped a lot of the jokes, a lot of the, oh, it's because you're a woman, it's this, it's that. And so for me, like, I got to the point where I just hated being in the military. And I knew that that's not the case for everyone, but it had beat me down so much. And at the time, I was like, I can't do this anymore. My partner was about to get posted out, and I was like, I just need to go. And so I tried to change my job within the military, and I was advised that if I changed my job, I'd get kicked out. And so they advised for me to actually go, like, discharge and then try and get back in. And so I took the advice from my warrant officer. I discharged. And as I went to apply to get back in, they told me I was unfit for duty, never to return to service again. That's what started the full depth of the depression, because I had been ill-advised. And so they didn't look after my rehab. I spent it's been 15 years from that journey. I'm still healing that now. Full transparency.
Yeah, wow. So, sorry, you're still speaking. Go.
No, that's what I was just going to say. So there was moments where I got really strong. Like, I've had some huge moments in my career where I've like bodybuilding, CrossFit, all those sorts of things. But when I had my son, everything opened back up again. So I've been on a really big healing journey, like cleaning it up powerfully now. So yeah.
Amazing. Well done. And we will get around to that part of the conversation. Well, that part of your story, her story, should I say. But yeah, so the military done a sneaky fucking, they set you up basically. So they advised you to discharge, because if they discharge you, then you would have got claims and support.
So I've since gone down that road, and they've legally medically discharged me and looked after me. Like, but this has been a 12-year battle. Like, it's not something, or 15 years. It's not something that just happened overnight. And I think what a lot of veterans don't understand is that when you sign that line, regardless of whether you stay in for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, there's a life commitment that happens in that. And I don't think I've realized the implication of that, right? So it's like, it's an interesting thought process that goes with it.
Okay, huge. What do you mean by that?
So when you first join, there's on your date of enlistment, there's a line that you have to sign to like pretty much say that the military now owns me. Like, whatever happens, like, it's up to them. I'll just be whatever they want me to be. And yeah, like seeing now I've been out for 13 years and seeing how it still impacts my life on a regular basis.
I hear you.
The irony isn't left on me, is what I'm trying to say.
I get it now. Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because all the big gangs of the world, you need to be jumped in order to get into it. And then if you ever leave it, they say, in certain gangs, obviously the boykies are in Australia, and whatever other mafias around the world. Blood in, blood out. If you jump out, you get killed or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Here's all the ones that are legal and legit,
Yeah.
and they're some of
Yeah.
the worst.
Got to be mindful what I say, and I don't want to be mindful, but I do think the intentions of every single person who joins the military is pure. Like, that's one thing I 100% believe, because I know the people who I enlisted with, I know the people who I joined with, they all have that, but the system isn't set up to support that, and that's
Yeah,
the unfortunate thing.
yeah. Just to piggyback that as well. That's what I was highlighting. It's a
Mm,
system that you're going into. They didn't create the military or the gang, even the
mm,
police. It's a system. Like, for instance, in Ireland, right? There's only 12 doctors per year that get trained.
oh,
And I had this conversation with my mother-in-law the last time I was back there. But of the last cohort, 11 of them emigrated immediately after they qualified. Only one stayed in Ireland. And that's the same. A lot of, if you notice, you go to hospitals and whatever over in Australia, they're full of Irish people because
yeah.
they're so overworked, underpaid, abused, neglected. All of, like, there's people doing 24-hour day, like back to
Mm,
back, crazy, ridiculous stuff, and going in and doing surgery. Even doctors going and doing surgeries that, according to their own profession wouldn't allow if they were to get tested, because they're sleep deprived, no
yeah.
breaks, no rest, and X, Y, and Z. But coming back to the doctor story, I was asking Mary, like, why is that the case? Of the 11 that move off, because when they go into doctorate for the first 12 months, they're like apprentice doctors. So
Mm,
the other older doctors treat them like absolute shit. Treat them
mm,
like dogs, give them a horrible life, give them all the shit work to do, and whatever, whatever, whatever. And I'm like, why? Like humans are
culture.
humans. Yeah, exactly. It's the
Yeah.
culture. It's the
Mm,
system that's been built. So what?
mm,
You're going to treat someone like a dog one week, and then when they're full doctor next week, you're going to be, what's the story? Do you want to go
yeah.
for a pint?
Yeah, it's unfortunately that's where the way most of the world has been built. Like,
Yeah,
when we look
most of
at
the
it.
systems. Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Anyways, coming back to your story, I'm back there. Fuck the system. Anyways, all systems.
You know what, for this conversation.
Anyways, we won't go down that hole. But coming back to you and your story, so you left the military. Yeah, you separated from the other guy,
Yeah, so
the
it
old
was about
fiance.
yeah, it was about 4 years. I was with him for 4 years before I separated from him, because I started about 3 years in. I remember he looked at me one day and he was like, every woman has their favorite fat dress, right? It's the dress that they wear when they're feeling frumpy and they don't wanna, like, they wanna feel good.
That's our favorite fat dress.
Yeah, every
I
woman has
love
it.
it.
Anyway,
Every
I
man
had put
has it too.
yeah, probably. But, I put this dress on and he looked at me and his words were, "You shouldn't wear that." And I was like, "Why not?" And he's like, "You're too fat for it." Because I put so much weight on from the injury, from not being able to move properly, and I just broke down because I knew he wasn't lying. Like, there was just such an element of truth that it just hurt. And so I went down to this local boot camp, and the guy was like, he'd do like boxing classes and stuff. And I was like, I can't do much, but I think I can just hold the pads and do something. I need to do something to help myself right now. And anyway, within a year, I had lost a whole heap of weight. And everyone was like, "Oh my God, you're so inspiring. You should become a personal trainer." Because I was starting to like do triathlons, and I was starting to get really involved in stuff because he helped me so much with my rehab. Anyway, I went home to talk to him about it. And he was like, we can't afford for you to study. And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "We can't afford for you to study." No. Meanwhile, all our money was spent on his cars, and like we had a lot of just shit that was unnecessary. So I went behind his back and got a loan without him knowing. And that was the start of us separating and me actually choosing what I wanted to do. And
Mhm.
so cut to it, I leave him, and then I didn't have the balls to start my own business at first. Like, I left
Ah,
him to start a business because he was told me, he's like, "You can't be in a relationship and have a business. It doesn't work like that." And so I was like, well, I have to either be a stay-at-home mom, which I thought I was infertile at 18 years old. On top of all of this, I'd been diagnosed with infertility. And so I was like, well, I can't have kids, so I'm out. Like, and So I built more protections, more of the strong ones. And then after about 3 years, I decided to, after getting fired from a job for, being too much of a gym head, I decided to go and start my own business. And I worked in cafes and I ran like 4 different jobs to get this business off the ground. And eventually I became quite a successful personal trainer. I had a company and everything like that. And one day I was sitting there with a client and we always used the same box for box jumps, right? It was like I think it was like 36 inches and it was quite wide. It was like one of those softer padded ones. Anyway, this one day it wasn't there. Someone else was using it. So we had to downgrade to the platform, right? Same height, just smaller area in which she could jump on.
The land, yeah.
Yeah, she couldn't do it. She was like, I can't do it. It just doesn't feel good for me. And she had a full nervous breakdown in the gym on the floor. And so her and I sat down and we were just talking and I just sort of supported her through it. And it was in that moment I realized no one's coming to the gym because they need someone to help them exercise. They're coming to the gym because of all the shit that's going on mentally. And at the time, I was doing all right with my business, but I also wasn't successful. And so I was like, I need to help myself. I need to figure out what's going on here, why I'm not successful as I want to be. And so my own drive for success started my personal development journey. And so I got in the room with Aaron Sensoni and he just fucking blew my mind. I was like, 200 people that are like me, what is going on? And I came back so inspired. I'd also joined network marketing at the same time. And within 3 weeks, I'm traveling to Texas and I'm doing all this stuff with this company because I just blew right up real quickly. And then I hit burnout really bad. And that's when the strong girl, the crying on the floor, I want someone to come save me hit. And I met this guy and I was like, oh my God, a man who believes that I can work and he can still love me. Because I had this belief that no man would love me if I was working and doing what I was doing. And within a couple of months of living with him, I had realized he was a closet alcoholic. Our relationship had become so volatile. And I was trying to drag him to everything personal development because I was like, I know you can change. I can see your heart, blah, blah, blah. What I realized was you can't change people. And it ended in domestic violence, that relationship, because I was trying to force my will on him so much, trying to get him to change. But I wasn't actually reading that it just wasn't the right fit. It just wasn't working. And so I then went on to, this is a period of 8 years, by the way. So we're some pieces
Good.
here.
We're on the clock.
Yeah, I declared after that. After that, I declared that I was going to heal myself and I was going to spend a whole year just learning. And I signed up with these 2 coaches and Urbane just happened to be in that same program. And so this was a month after and I didn't think anything of it.
What program was that?
Pardon?
What program was that?
That was called Become with Abby and Jared back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
Yeah. So that was way back in the day. And I was because I just knew I needed to get myself right and heal myself. Cut to 6 months later, I've got a VIP seat, Tony Robbins in the arena. I just went hard on myself for cleaning up everything I could energetically because I was I made a commitment. I was I'm ready calling my husband. I'm not fucking around anymore. I'm done with all the trauma from men and the things that I've experienced. And Bane was sitting two rows behind me. Yeah, I'd made this declaration that I was no longer going to fear that men couldn't love. And I was just going to get curious around how men could love. And within 24 hours, I'm sitting on a date with Urbane, telling him how I'm looking for a husband and I'm doing all the things. And he was just yeah, well, that's what I'm looking for too. Cut back to 8 months later. I'm thinking I'm infertile. I sit in ayahuasca. 6 weeks later, I fall pregnant with my son. And just, it was God just started spitting everything at me that I ever wanted. I can't explain how quickly that shift happened from domestic violence. Literally, I ruined my business in that relationship. I had 3 clients that were paying me $106 a week. And I had to call my dad just to pay my rent, just to get through that next block of changing my life. And from then until now, like, the rest is history. Like, but it was that matter of like, it wasn't about anyone else. The change had to happen with me first. And so,
Amazing.
yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
crazy
amazing.
to look at it
Yeah,
from that.
incredible. That's a really good hero story, and
Mm,
still only, I think that's 4 years off or 3 years off. There's still a bit to
mm.
go in that
Yeah,
story. But
yeah,
one
yeah.
thing you did say at the very somewhere along the lines there was, "Oh my God, I'm in a room with 200 people and they're all just like me."
Mm,
Can you quickly dive into, before we celebrate on the next one, can
mm,
you quickly dive into the importance of being around people who are like-minded, um, and how they can help elevate you to success?
mm. Well, I think prior to that room, I remember asking myself, like, why could I never be satisfied? And I was always like, there's got to be more to life. There's got to be more to life. Like, I was constantly like searching for something. But what I realized was I was just constantly in the wrong room. Like, I
Mm,
was, I wasn't around people who vibrated at the same level that I did. And like, when I actually understood that I am a motherfucking light in this world, like, I know that when I walk into a room, I have an impact on someone. But it took
mhm,
me a long time to claim that, and a long time to actually bear witness to the reason why I'm here is because my gift is to invoke change in others. Like, even right down to my human design, when you look at my life, fucking whatever they call it, it's like to invoke change in others, And so for me, spending my whole life questioning, who am I? What am I here for? What do I have to do in this life? It wasn't necessarily about what I was doing, but it was who I was being and who I was around. And the minute that I got in that room and I was like, these people get me, I suddenly like settled in my soul,
mhm.
because I didn't feel like I had to reach or prove myself to friends anymore or anything like that. Like, if I didn't want to drink it, it was no longer a problem. Like, if I didn't want to just sit around and bitch about people, it was no longer a problem because I had people who were also on that same wavelength as me.
Yes, I
Mm,
love it. Well done.
mm,
Well
yeah,
done.
thank
Um,
you.
huge congratulations for those who know and those who don't. Here we go. Casey, as of today, you've officially dropped 14 kgs. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so
Go on,
excited.
own it. Talk to me. Tell me. Give us
Yeah. Well,
everything.
this is the healing part that we are talking about. Post pregnancy with my son, he's now 3.5. I entered back into the injured, depressed cycle of feeling like I just couldn't
Because that's
take
a
myself
big thing with
on.
women too, isn't it? Post pregnancy.
Post-traumatic.
That's
Oh
it, is
yeah,
it?
postnatal depression. Yeah.
Postnatal depression, yeah.
Yeah, like, and the thing was, like, I was so good at hiding it. Like, no one knew that I was like navigating this, and I was so good at, like, because I was so good at what I did and how I coached and all those things, I could coach myself out of it every single day. But it was fucking hard work, like really hard work. And in that time, I gained 20 kilos of weight. And so when I met my partner, I had like a six pack. I was super like lean, and, I was a personal trainer. Right. And then coming into having gained all that, I felt just not myself as a woman, like completely disconnected. And so, um, I remember sitting on the call with Preston, our mentor, and he was like, I was sitting there and I'm like, I just know that there's something else here, and I'm so sick of feeling like this. I said, I feel like I've got no life force. And he was like, you've got the business, you got the family, you got the life. Your next up level is through your body. And as soon as he said it to me, it was like a fucking light just went off. Like, it was like, duh. Like,
It's,
like, I
it's so
knew
annoying
that.
how simple it is sometimes.
But But what he didn't know was, like maybe 2 or 3 months prior, I'd sat with ayahuasca, and I had this vision of myself, like, the end of this year being lean. And so I knew that, like, there was something coming, something happening. And anyway, the day after him, I'm talking to one of my other girlfriends, and she's like, I'm doing this thing and I've just dropped 20 kilos and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what is going on? I was like, whatever you're doing, just tell me. And I'm just doing it too. And so I signed up with the same coach that she was with. And
What's
yeah,
his
it's been
name? Give him a
his
plug.
name's Colin Watson. My God, go and follow
Colin
this man.
Watson.
He is he always goes on about he's the number one in health and fitness, and there's a fucking reason why. Like,
Yeah.
not only did we have we been navigating, the physical aspects of losing weight, but he has held me through the trauma that's come with all of it, and navigating, like, reconnecting in with my body with trust. Because when you go from not being able to walk, and then there's the fear that that's going to happen again, it impacted every area of my life, my sex life, my, you know, like, just sitting down to do work with people, like, my back would be hurting after an hour. Like, it was impacting every area of my life. And because I was trying to hide that from the world, it was like I was just constantly gaining all this weight and this pressure until I actually admitted to myself, I'm not in a good space right now. Like, and stopped hiding it. That's when I actually was able to take ownership. And that comes back to the first thing I was talking about. It's like, don't hide shit, because when you hide shit, you carry it. And it's like, the more that you share what's real for you, the less you have to carry the fucking load. And I was physically carrying the load, 14 fucking kilos of it, right? Like, I got
Yes.
6 to go, and I'm like counting down because I'm like so in this. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. And something, just a light bulb went off. I don't know where I read it or seen it, but the body is a lie detector.
Yes.
The body is literally, and in the work that we do, it's where we get all our clues from in terms of guiding the client to their own breakthroughs. But it literally is, and I've also spoke about this in terms of foundations. I've heard many people say you start from the top down. I said, no, you fucking don't. You don't build a house from the roof down. You build it
Yeah.
from the foundations up, which means you work on the body first, and
Yeah.
the mindset will come after, because
Mm.
you get clarity
I
on the wisdom along the way.
I always think of Maslow's hierarchy when I'm, like, in this, because it's like, I was always like, oh yeah, I used to be fit, I had a six pack, blah blah blah, all the things, and then you get to self actualization on it, right? But it was like I had to start at the beginning. It's not like linear. Like, people think it's linear, and the thing is, like, when you are as intelligent as I am, I'm just gonna really for a moment, you can fool the world. Like, you really can. You can play confidence, you can do all the things, but your body isn't gonna fucking lie. Like, your body, as much as you can speak it, you can have the gift of the gab, you can convince others, your body will physically show you what's going on every single time. And that's what was happening to me. As much as I was trying to pretend I was okay and give everyone the story that I was okay, my body just kept piling on the weight. And so it was like, the minute I stopped lying to myself firstly, and then, like, to my partner and all of that, everything opened up. Like, you've seen what we navigated in the last 6 months. We nearly separated over that same stuff. Like,
And
it's
yeah,
like, yeah, it's
I was
huge.
there. I was there. So I
Yeah.
commend you both greatly for the work and the effort that you put in on your relationship. Um, 3 quick questions, right? Well, they're all huge, by the way.
I'll try and land the plane.
I,
I'll try.
I don't do fucking shallow questions, but how important is it in one more thing I will add. What you said about, yeah, you can fill the world and you can run away from and try to hide everything, but you can't run away from yourself. I just want to tie that down. So what you're
Yeah.
really doing, for anybody listening to this, is you're compounding your own pain, going all the way back to the start of the podcast or the chat. You're building your own prison, essentially.
All
So,
of it.
which ties into my question: how important is it for people to accept responsibility for where they're at and be honest with themselves, basically?
Oh, mate, I think it's everything. Like, we can sit here and blame the world, but nothing changes until we blame ourselves. And not blame in a way where it's like, you're not a good person, but like just taking ownership, because we are always in co-creation with God, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it. Whether you agreed to it consciously or not, there is some part you played here. So when you accept that, that's when you can start to go, all right, let me clean this up for myself.
Bingo, jackpot.
Yeah.
So yeah, Case, an absolute incredible conversation and story. I know you're on the clock with a client. Land this plane as fast or as long as you want. Oh, here we go, here we go. You know, coming through all the adversity of the addiction in the childhood, the problem of being discharged, self-discharged from the military, and the domestic violence along the way, and even all the weight that you've currently navigated, and are absolutely smashing out of the park and out of your body right now. Can you help the listener understand the life that you live today and the level that you play at? So in terms of we all go through struggles,
Yeah.
but we can also build X, Y, and Z on the other side of those. Go.
Yeah. So just to put it really simply, like I have a relationship that I'm so fucking proud of, like incredibly proud of. I have a man that supports me through everything and just holds me when, coming from a space where, my father wasn't available, all the things that for me is very big. I have an incredible son. So healing infertility on top of that, like I think when you look at the physical things that have been healed in my life, you see like this work healed my son, like brought me my son. Like, so for me,
Woo!
I don't think that bit's gonna make me emotional, but I don't
Let
think
it out. Don't be a pussy. Say what you were
I
going to say.
I talk to Preston about this all the time. It's like if I didn't meet him, I wouldn't have my son because he really helped me heal a lot of what I had with men, the wounding that I had. And so I think the level that I play at now is like I literally work with women all over the world, helping them build businesses that just light their life on fire. Like, and I work like 8 hours a week, and I am with my son, and I make a lot of money doing it. And it's just I don't think you can put it into words when it comes to that. Like, I literally get to live and breathe what I want to do, and I travel the world doing it, and I make fucking hundreds of thousands of dollars every year doing it. Like, I think, when I play at this level, like, the mentors that I've worked with, like I've worked with, Grant Cardone, Preston Smiles, Joel Brown, I
Tony
could give you
Robbins and a few more.
Tony Robbins, I've worked with like the biggest in the industry, and I think, just anchoring yourself into that space of being like, I'm not here to be a big fish. I'm just here to like circulate and make the world and the pond that we're swimming in better. And that for me has been
Amazing.
mm,
Amazing. In other words, helping other women to heal and overcome their
yeah.
stories and get
Yeah, I
to the
know
level that
there's
we all deserve to play at because we all have the tools. Well, we have the wisdom. The
mm,
tools can be learned and the
yeah,
strategies along the way. So well done. Thank you for your contribution to the world.
yeah.
Um, Thank you for bringing Preston up because it's perfect timing. This episode is going to go live next week.
Oh,
So, yes, it is.
come
Whoop,
join us
whoop.
in the bridge room.
Come and join us in the bridge. Bridge was the single biggest thing that led me on this trajectory in life. Um, Without
Same.
going through the bridge, I would not never be with Saoirse. I wouldn't be traveling the world. I wouldn't be a coach. I wouldn't be serving others. I wouldn't be um living life on my own terms, basically. Living in Bali, all the rest of it. Oh, I most certainly wouldn't have kids with Saoirse because our relationship was at dead end, rock bottom before I walked into that room. That was our last hope because I had deep abandonment wounds that I
Yeah.
blamed on her. So my
Mm,
mistrust in her was really mistrust within myself based on my childhood trauma.
yeah.
And the bridge experience was the thing that smashed that to smithereens, got me to see what it was that was holding me back. And it also got me to the place where I could let it go and understand.
Yes.
Instead of pointing the finger outward, it was really my own stuff to deal with. So, Casey, you give a quick recap of yours.
Oh man, the bridge for me opened the the strong mask wound I spoke about so many times through this. It literally obliterated it. And I had just met my partner. I was only with him for like a month, and he literally told me, "Get your ass in the room." And I think he did it now in hindsight because he knew that if I didn't do it, there would be no way that he could ever fully receive what I am as a woman or be with who I am as a woman. So um I always say I have a life before and after bridge. My whole life blew up in the best possible way after bridge. And
It's true.
I went from struggling fucking PT, can't hold a relationship, like, infertile, to man of my dreams, life of my dreams, beautiful son, living in a house that we love, like all the things, purely because I built the body that could now hold it rather than run from it every fucking minute I had.
You.
Yeah.
Casey Case, absolute gold, wisdom all over the shop. Final question. The Successful Irishman is the name of the podcast.
Mm.
What does success mean to you?
You know, I think everyone has a different opinion of this, and mine has changed over the years. But success for me is sitting at home with a calm nervous system, knowing that you did the thing that you were meant to do today. Like that for me. And like when you look around your home and you see the people you love in it and you can just be at peace, that's success.
Yes.
I
love it. I love it. I love it because you probably don't know the full depth of why it's called the Successful Irishman podcast. And the reason it is to challenge society's idea of success.
Yes.
Because it's not the cars and the house and the clothes and the watches and the fucking six packs and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, all of us, I know what the work that we're doing, we've done that. Didn't work. It didn't work. There's a reason why we do what we do now, you know, like when you learn the body and how it is, like success just hits different.
There you go. We're going to finish on that one. Casey, absolute legend. Love chatting. Can't wait to get over to Australia. I'll be over there next Thursday. And I'll be in my camper van floating
I can't
around.
wait to.
Yes.
Wait.
Let's do it. Look at you. Enjoy. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks a million.